Hello and thank you. Welcome to Covenant Calendar Club. We're so glad that you're here, and we hope that you will be blessed by this teaching. And we just want to give you a big warm shout out and say hello to everyone watching in YouTube. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom, shalom. Thank you very much. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the camera over to Charlene and Tim, and we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, everyone. Tonight we are going to be looking at part 2 of the moon over the moon, and I think we have some really interesting things to share with you. But there's a little word from Mario before we get started on that.
Okay. Well, thank you for the. I just wanted to share with you. You know, as a business owner, we oftentimes have to hire someone, and we train them, and we work with them, and we're excited for their future, and hope they're excited to work with us as well. And however, oftentimes when we let someone know that, for example, you have mustard on your face, we find out that some people respond to that differently. Some people say, "Oh, thank you so much," and unfortunately, there are also those that say, "I can't do anything right. Why are you getting down on me? Why are you, accusing me of, And really, all we're trying to do is help let them know, hey, by the way, that you have mustard on your face. I mean, I don't understand how or why today people seem to be offended if you let them know, like, hey, by the way, your zipper's down. I would say thank you very much for letting me know. As opposed to, what are you doing judging me that I want my zipper down? I mean, and it's very unfortunate. We don't know how someone's going to respond. All we can do is the best that we can and just let them know, hey, I just wanted to let you know that you have some mustard on your face, and they take it in a way where they'll say, thank you, thanks for letting me know, and they choose to wipe it off. So I just thought I would throw that in there. I think it might be fitting to what we're about to discuss this evening.
Thank you very much, Mario, and absolutely it is very fitting for what we're going to do in the first 30 slides or so. And with that introduction, we'll just get started. How is that? Are you okay with that?
Okay.
All right, so we got it.
I'm looking forward to it. This is great.
Oh, okay. All right, so with part 2, we're anxious to get started, and I think it'll be a nice surprise tonight. Hopefully it will be informative information. So last week we had part 1, and we said what will be next. Well, we did not have a chance to finish the portion of 3394, which was yareach, if I'm pronouncing that right. It was the first number used for moon in the scriptures, and tonight we're going to do the last part of that study. I've actually titled it The Ordinances of the Moon. I know that many of you have wondered what the ordinances of the moon are, and Tim and I were sort of under the understanding for many years that the ordinances of the moon had everything to do with the moon month. So that is what we are going to be looking at for the basic part of the study tonight. But for the first part here, I just have a little review for part 1 on 3394 for those of you that maybe missed last week. This is talking about the moon. It is the word number that absolutely identifies the literal moon in the sky. This is the noun component, and we looked at it last week. It is used 26 times in the Tanakh. But we also found that 3394 is used in the Torah only 3 times. The first usage is in Genesis 37:9. It is the portion of Joseph and his dream with the sun, the moon, and the stars. And we also discovered that the moon in that usage was of prophetic significance. It had nothing to do with starting the month. There were 2 more usages for 3394. Both of them are found in Deuteronomy, one in chapter 4 and one in chapter 17. And they both included strict warnings not to look to the moon for the commencement of worship practices. It also mentioned the sun, the stars, and all of the heavenly host that we will see in the sky. And the third point, we found that Moses did not use 3394 as a noun to designate that the moon is in charge of the festal month commencement in any of the Torah verses. Not one mention of this. Now, we thought that the moon as the literal object in the sky to designate the moon month, it should have been mentioned here, but it wasn't. We also had some valid comments and concerns about judgment. This is something that we do need to address. This could be addressed right at the beginning of any calendar study because it's such a controversial topic. And we need to be sure about what's happening with judgment. Yahuah's calendar does not use the moon to calculate the month commencement for the purpose of defining the appointed times. Well, there is a question, and we always have lots of questions in our PowerPoints. So here we go. When this study is presented, this cabinet calendar study is presented to those that are still using the moon month to calculate their festal months, there can be and there will be judgmental concerns either from the study itself or sometimes it comes from those that present it or from both areas. This is a really serious question and it has a very valid concern, and we felt that it should be addressed before we actually do part 2 of the moon study so we can proceed and we're all on the same page. But the question really is, where is this concern coming from? So let's investigate this a little bit. We're going to take a closer look at Deuteronomy, both the scriptures in chapter 4 and chapter 17. Both of these were written approximately 1451 BC. And tonight, Tim is going to be team teaching with me, and he'll be helping with reading these scriptures. This time, we are going to look at scripture verses around the one verse that we gave last week. We want to look at some content and context to be sure that we know what these verses really, really mean. So we will let Tim help us with some of these scripture readings and a few other comments.
Deuteronomy 4:1. Now therefore hearken, O Israel, unto the statutes and unto the judgments which I teach you, for to do them that ye may live. Ye shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall ye diminish aught from it. And lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun, and the moon, and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldst be driven to worship them and serve them, which Yahuah thy Elohim hath divided unto all nations under the whole heaven. Take heed unto yourselves, lest ye forget the covenant of Yahuah your Elohim, which he made with you, and make you a graven image, or the likeness of anything, which Yahuah thy Elohim hath forbidden thee. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto you go over Jordan to possess it. Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed.
Thank you very much, Tim. There was some pretty strong language in there, and we're just going to take another closer look at Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 3, but we will do some verses around it as well. In this particular scripture, we have an if-then scenario. Basically, it's saying, if you do this, then this will happen. So, Tim, let's hear it.
Deuteronomy 17:2-5. If there be found among you within any of thy gates, which Yahuah thy Elohim giveth thee, man or woman that hath wrought wickedness in the sight of Yahuah thy Elohim, in transgressing his covenant, and hath gone and served other gods, and worshipped them, either the sun or moon, or any of the host of heaven which I have not commanded, and it be told thee and thou hast heard of it, and inquired diligently, and behold, it be true, and that thing certain, that such abomination is wrought in Israel. Then shalt thou bring forth that man or that woman which hath committed that wicked thing unto thy gates, even that man or that woman, and shalt stone them with stones till they die. Pretty serious.
Yes, Tim.
We see that in verse 3 there's where it says, and served other gods. That serving is a very important thing, and we're going to touch more on this very quickly.
Also, the word abomination is a very, very strong word in this scripture, and if you don't know the definition of it, I really do recommend you look it up. It basically means utmost hatred. So whatever is being commanded here is of utmost hatred. Do not do anything to break this command. Now the thing is, there seems to be quite a concern about this. Right here in verse 5, we have a death penalty. It says, if you find any man or woman doing such a thing, to stone them with many stones till they die. Well, I'm very happy that we don't stone people today, but still, it was a very strong concern. We should pay attention to it. So what are the 613 mitzvot? Well, Torah says this is the primary source for Jewish ethics. And the 613 mitzvot is really a Hebrew word that literally means commandments. And there are many that teach these 613 commands say this: by eating the pomegranate, we figuratively show our desire and hope to fulfill all 613 commands given by Moses. Oh, well, what does that mean? Well, there's been some people that have taken the time to count the seeds in pomegranates. And what we have understood is that the average amount of seeds in a pomegranate is about 613. And I'm sure that many of you remember that the priest's garment for the sanctuary had a pomegranate and a bell at the bottom of his linen robe. So this seems to be a connection here through the Jewish ethics, that there has to be 613 commands, aside from just the 10 commandments, that we need to pay attention to. But there is a problem. Moses also gave the commands found in Deuteronomy 4 and 17, not to look to the sun and the moon, etc. We read the verses. Our study tonight is going to concentrate on looking at the moon. And you will hear this in many, many places from many teachers, that there are 613 commandments. But guess what? You can search those 613 commands very easily by plugging in these Deuteronomy 4 and 17 verses, and they are not found among the 613 listed commands. And my question is, why not? Because these are definitely commands from Moses. Now, the other thing, if you read the 613, you will find that there is a lot of repetition. Some of the commands are repeated 2 or 3 times. Some are from the positive side, some from the negative side. So there's many duplicates and triplicates and even more than that. So it seemed unusual to me that these 2 very specific commands were left out. Was that convenient or not? Well, the question is, what would Job say about this? We should take another look. And before Tim actually reads the scripture from Job, I'd just like to remind you that Job's testimony is actually around the time of Abraham in the book of Genesis. So his time frame was basically around the same time as Genesis 12, 13, 14, and 15. He lived at approximately that time. He actually lived a little longer than Abraham from what we understand. So if Job's book was put into the proper order chronologically, his book would fall somewhere in the Genesis 12 area or maybe a little bit before. So I consider his counsel is just as important as any Torah scripture commands. That's why I think it's really important that we pay attention to what Job 31 has to say.
Job 31, 26 to 28. If I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking in brightness, and my heart hath been secretly enticed to allure, that's H3391, to allure, be deceived, persuaded, coaxed, or seduced into a thought process without knowingly registering it. This also were, or would be, an iniquity to be punished by the judge. For I should have denied the Elohim that is above. So secretly enticed, that's very, very interesting, because if you are secretly enticed, this is something that you do not know about, and you would carry on as if you were completely oblivious to being coerced into this deception. And Job is talking about this quite strongly, about, if we're observing the times of the moon or the sun and we're worshiping these entities, this is a punishment from, or we will be punished by the judge. Very, very serious.
Yes, absolutely. And so that is definitely a judgment, and that is a divine judgment. We're just the message bearers. We didn't say it. Job did. And of course, we know who the great judge is. And I believe that Job was following all the commands of Torah, even though they were not written down in stone yet. He knew about these commands just as Adam did and all the patriarchs and prophets up to the time of Moses writing these commands on the tables of stone after they were in the Book of the Covenant.
I'm wondering, I have a question. I'm wondering, are we going to address serving? Because some people say, well, we don't worship it. We just use it for my time clock, or my watch. And is that a form of worship, serving it like that?
Tim?
Yes, I do believe that is a part of serving, is when you're worshiping. We're going to be looking at some of these definitions coming up very soon. And you're going to notice that one of the definitions is observing for religious purposes. This has become very directly pertinent to this question of what we're going to be looking at. So if you'll just wait a little bit, we'll go through this very carefully.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, excellent. And I don't think it's an accident that the word serve was put into both of those scriptures in Deuteronomy along with the word worship. It wasn't put into just one, but it was put in there twice. And remember that we are learning that when something is emphasized more than one time, it means pay attention, ears up, there's something going on. But anyway, this next question is important, and I would like you to pay attention to what it says. Are Yahuah's people allowed to judge words and action of Torah-professing believers that violate Torah commands? Think about that very carefully and compare it to the courts that we have on this earth today. If you are brought into a court, you can only be judged on your words and your actions, something that you heard or see somebody do. You cannot judge what you think they did, only what you saw or heard them do. Does the same concept apply to Yahuah's people when it comes to Torah commands? And we're saying yes, but we always must remember to do this in love and mercy and kindness. However, no one is allowed to judge onto salvation what is in the heart of that individual. We don't want to judge that. You do not know what is in people's hearts. But most people will talk about, or they will act out what they actually believe. And that is telling you what their belief is. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more and see what Isaiah has to say. But if the Deuteronomy 4 and 17 commands are not found among the 613 mitzvot, does that mean there's no place for judgment to salvage an erring child of Yahuah? Does it seem like those commands were maybe conveniently left out so that the judging part would be taken away? I don't know. I'll leave that up to you to decide. Well, here we are with the command from Isaiah 58:1. This is one of my favorites. Listen to what he has to say. Cry aloud, spare not. Lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sins. This is a command that we are not to be silent when we see or hear somebody doing something against Torah when they profess to be Torah observant people. But
Charlene?
remember, yes.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question, and that is it possible to lift up our voice like a trumpet and show the people transgression of the law without judging their actions or their words? It comes to my mind that we have to have, or we need to be able to judge the actions and words before we are able to discuss with them their transgression. Am I correct here, or am I going too far?
That's the way I understand it. Maybe Mario has a comment he would like to add.
Well, I think if we care about somebody, like I had mentioned earlier, if you have mustard on your face, wouldn't you want to know? I mean, if they take it like we're judging them, like we're the judge, and that wasn't our intent to present it that way. We just want to let somebody know the possibility that you might want to wipe that off. I mean,
Yes.
That's a really tough question.
Yes.
Yes, but we feel that the verse does not say that we are to judge the life, just to judge the sin. This is called a sin. It's called a transgression in Deuteronomy. I don't know how you can get around that. Like I said, it's a very touchy issue, and we just want to work through it here tonight, give a little bit more understanding. Don't forget, Isaiah said, cry aloud and spare not. It is a command from Isaiah. It's a hard command. It's difficult to be able to know how to share this without hurting somebody's feelings.
Well,
So does Isaiah not give permission?
Doesn't that right there give us another command that we are to cry out aloud to let someone know if we see something? Or are we just supposed to be quiet and just, ignore it and let it go?
I believe
Well,
that,
we're going to...
I believe that gives us the right to speak about it. But I also believe that we have to have backing from the scriptures, solid backing, numerous witnesses where we can support what we are saying. If we don't have that foundation, then I believe we should keep our mouths shut.
Absolutely. We need to be good students of the word, and we need to know what the word is saying. So the first question that we have here is, does Isaiah not give permission to determine the fruits of others when we can see them and we can hear their words as to whether or not they are in violation of covenant? Especially if they say that they're Torah observant believers. And how can others be warned of their covenant violations if no one is ever allowed to judge the evidence of what is seen? That becomes a little bit of a touchy situation. And remember, we're going to look at some verses. If we do not cry aloud and spare not, there are consequences for us as well. I just want to remind you about the worship reminders in Deuteronomy 4:19. I'll have Tim read this again because we need to keep coming back to this verse so we are very sure of what it is saying to us.
Deuteronomy 4:19. And lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, even all the host of heaven, shouldst be driven to worship them and serve them, and hath gone and served other gods and worshipped them, either the sun or moon, or any of the host of heaven, which I have not commanded. that serving is a very, very, very important word. No, we don't have to get down on our hands and knees and move our arms and obeisance to these celestial objects. If we place these celestial objects at the foremost, at the front of our lives, and we take guidance from those celestial objects and let it rule over our lives, especially in our worship systems towards our Creator, Yahuah, we are then serving those celestial identities. And if we are secretly seduced, we will not even know it. Go ahead, Charlene.
Yes, and don't forget that these commands were attended with a death penalty in the Tanakh. It was a very serious thing. These judgmental connotations of worship and serve, well, both of these chapters speak of two very serious commands: not to even look to any of the heavenly bodies, lest they be served and worshipped. If you don't remember anything else tonight, I hope you don't forget that one. And also remember, this is 40 years after worshiping the golden calf at Mount Sinai. So what was Moses really trying to tell the people? Could it be he was saying, you know what, if you don't look, you likely won't worship the gods of the pagans or worship the way the pagans do. What were they doing? They were looking to the sun for their sun god worship. They were looking to the moon for moon god worship. They were worshiping all of the heavenly host. And we're going to find out later on in our studies that the sun god and the moon god were two of the major gods that were worshipped by the pagans and eventually by Yahuah's people as well. So Moses was just trying to give them a heads up. And he basically said, but I know that when I die, you are going to do exactly that. And we will delve into that deeper in later on presentations. So a closer look at the word worship in Deuteronomy. We need to figure out if the word worship in the Tanakh, in the Torah, is going to have or maintain the same definition as what we find in our dictionaries today. So let's look at 7812 first. This happens to be a primitive root. It means to depress, to prostrate, especially reflexive, in homage to royalty or to Elohim. And then the King James Version will also lift other variations of this word in the Tanakh, which mean bow or bow down or crouch or to fall flat, fall down flat, humbly beseech, to make obeisance, as Tim has already mentioned, do reverence or make to stew, worship. This ideas of serving as well as worship. Now, I'm just wondering if Tim or Mario can remember the comment by Neil on the words to depress. Does anybody remember what he said? He had a very good comment about what he thought to depress meant.
I'm sorry, I can't recall that, Charlene.
Yeah,
I can't either. But anyway, basically to prostrate oneself in homage. So our question is, will the Hebrew definitions differ from what we find today in our dictionaries? So let's go look at the 1828 Webster's Dictionary first. This is a dictionary that takes the words of the scriptures back to their original meaning. And this is from 1828. It is a noun, and I use the definitions that are applying to what we're looking at today. It means chiefly and eminently, the act of paying divine honors to the Supreme Being, or the reverence and homage paid to him in religious exercises, consisting of adoration, confession, prayer, thanksgiving, and the like. Well, seems to agree with what I understand worship means today. Also, he has a definition of the homage paid to idols or false gods by the pagans as the worship of Isis. He also gives the verb form for the word worship as to adore, to pay divine honors to to reverence with supreme respect and veneration, or to perform acts of adoration. And now look at number 3, to perform religious service. So Webster's in 1828 is connecting worship up with service, just like we had from Moses. Worship and serve. I also took it to the modern dictionary of Merriam-Webster today for worship. He uses transitive verb, meaning basically the same, to honor or reverence as a divine being or a supernatural power, to regard with great or extravagant respect, honor, or devotion. And then he says the intransitive verb is to perform or take part in worship or an act of worship. Well, basically the same. There didn't seem to be much change there. I also looked at the Oxford Dictionary just to be sure, and they list worship as a noun and a verb. In the noun, it is the feeling or expression of reverence and adoration for a deity, and the example was worship of the Mother Goddess. As a verb, to show reverence and adoration for a deity, and his example was the Maya built jungle pyramids to worship their gods. So again, it seems like all the terms and definitions for worship have really not changed from the Hebrew. Well, let's take now a closer look at the word serve in Deuteronomy for the Hebrew definition. Once again, it is the primitive root. It means to work in any sense, by implication to serve or to till, causatively look, to enslave. And the King James Version can also use these other words. That means keep in bondage, be a bondman, bond service, compel, execute, to keep laboring and bring to pass and cause to make, serving, becoming a servant, all these words. And then at the very end, be wrought and to be a worshiper. So once again, with the Hebrew, serve is connecting up to the word worship. Well, will today's definitions differ from Hebrew? Well, what I found, I didn't put the slides here, but you can go and look it up. Between the Strong's Hebrew definitions and the dictionaries of today, the definitions for worship are all about the same, and exactly the same thing happened with the word serve. The definition did not really change for the word serve from the Hebrew to what we find in Webster's 1828 or modern day dictionaries. However, there is another word that we need to define to understand why Moses gave these commands and how this could be linked to the issue of judging. I wonder if you know what that word is. There it is, syncretism. We talked about this a little bit in part 1. We're going to delve into this a little bit more so that we can understand what in the world syncretism has to do with worship and service. What does this word mean? There seems to be an Islam, Hindu, Karaite Jew connection. If you remember, Anand synchronized the Hindus, the Karaite Jews, and Islam. They have similar ways of worship from the same area of time, and they all have the star and the crescent moon symbol. It is like a golden thread that binds these three different religions together, even though they are all very different. And when you just go on the internet, and you can find all kinds of pictures of worship and serving, and it's around the moon. Some of them have something to do with the stars, but all three have the common thread of the moon. Synchronism. This is the man that synchronized these three great religions of the world. What about Moses and syncretism? And the question is, what is religious syncretism? Simply, it is a practice of adaptation that joins elements of one or more religions into another, just kind of connects them all together. And the result of that is the basic principles of all the religions that are connected together are fundamentally altered with one common thread, or it could be two, but a common thread. 2 times in Deuteronomy, Moses warned the people of the insidious and crafty forms of false worship, especially the worship of deities fashioned after the heavenly bodies, including religious syncretism. Well,
Charlene?
what about syncretism? Yes.
There's that question there, what is religious syncretism? And I'm asking you, when those verses were left out of or those 2 verses in Deuteronomy were left out of the 613 commands of Yahuah, when they were left out and disregarded, could that be considered syncretism? Because when they were left out, it allowed the vices of looking to the moon and the sun to worship our Creator. It allowed that to creep into religion. And in my mind, that is part of the syncretism that has crept in and allowed these problems to arise, these worship systems that are totally against our Creator.
Absolutely, Tim, because let me just go back one more slide, and we'll show you that actually the Karaite Jews are very closely connected to any of the Jewish system. So yes, I believe 100% that those commands were left out, and that does bind all of the Messianic Jews, the Orthodox Jews. It binds them all together in this syncretism. It's a very important term, and I think that when we see what is happening, we will become very aware of what a very interesting plan it was to bind these very different religions together with a moon that is in the sky.
Yes.
And Tim, I'm going to let you go ahead and work on this slide after I do the title here, because syncretism is really important way back then and right now. So let's do a little bit of more work around this area.
The warning to Israel was very clear: to avoid all religious syncretism that attempted to join the worship of Yahuah with the worship of pagan gods. Moses said, "Don't even look lest you worship." He was dead serious about this warning, also telling Israel that they would do exactly the opposite after his death. These are the verses that you'll see, these warnings and his predictions in Deuteronomy. There's many more. When he said, "Don't even look lest you worship," that look, from my experience, what I understand, it means don't look with a reason to accept guidance from. I go outside and I look up the moon, and I believe the moon is an incredibly fascinating creation of my Creator. It's beautiful. It's a fantastic thing. It has so much control over agriculture on this earth. However, I still believe that it was Yahuah that created it. Yahuah had the power. It is him that takes the glory. The moon is but a creation of him. So if we look at it for guidance, that turns into worship. But if we look at it as something that our Creator created and give him the glory, then I believe it's acceptable. Now let's go down to these points on the page. The Old Testament history documents Israel's sun worship with Baal, Israel's moon worship with Ashtoreth and the groves and high places. The prophet Elijah chided the people for attempting to waver between 2 opinions. And you'll read about that in 1 Kings 18:21. That's around 678 BC. And Ezekiel also had many serious warnings, both for the yareach and the watchman. And you'll see those dates there before Yahusha's time. Israel was constantly going to the pagan nations and learning from them their worship practices. And the scripture is full of warnings against this practice. It's full of warnings of what Yahuah thought of looking to the sun and the moon for guidance.
Yes, and we're going to be looking at that history, in a few weeks from now. So just to hang on, because we want to learn from the patterns of Yah's people in the Old Testament so that we are not repeating the same mistakes. And believe me, the same warning applies to all of us today. This did not end at the cross. Well, how should Deuteronomy 4 and 17 instructions be viewed today? When we learn that our prior worship practices were based on ignorance that amounted to worshiping, and that's according to Moses' words, it amounted to worshiping or giving sacred regard to any of the heavenly bodies that were falsely connected to defining weekly and annual worship times, then it is time to repent and to accept Yahuah's calendar that does not align with the sun for day start. Yahuah's calendar has nothing to do with the sun for day start. It has nothing to do with the month for the month start and the year start when we are talking about his festivals, feasts, the annual ones. And his calendar does not align with equinox for the year start. So when we learn of Yahuah's calendar and what it says not to follow and what it allows, that is the time to ponder and say, you know what, I have been doing that. It's a if and a then statement. If you understand it, then you repent and you turn your life around and go the other direction. So that's how this should be viewed today. A wonderful command from Moses. Yahuah has an everlasting mercy policy. We are told in Acts 17:30. I love this verse because it tells us of his mercy and his grace. He says, and the times of this ignorance Yahuah winked at, but now he commands every man everywhere to repent. This is not just about keeping calendar or repenting of an old calendar. This is anything, but especially when it comes to calendar, this verse applies very, very nicely, that Yahuah winks at it. He knows if we don't know, and he just understands that we are coming to give him worship and service the best that we know and understand how. He has such great mercy, and he does not bring judgment upon those who simply do not know his calendar truths yet. And that's the best part for me. What is Yahuah's choice for those that have become aware of these Mosaic commands, yet they deliberately turn away from them, to intentionally seek out the sun and the moon calendars, just as the Jews, the Karaites, Islam, and pagan cultures do? What choice do we give to Yahuah when we know the truth, we have heard it, and yet we deliberately turn away from it? That is a serious issue.
Yes.
There are watchman responsibilities. It is not just a responsibility of each and every person that is listening, but the watchman that is crying aloud and sparing not has a responsibility as well. Ezekiel 33:7 says, so thou, O son of man, I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel. Therefore thou shalt hear the word at thy mouth and warn them from me. So if we know about these truths in the Torah, especially for calendar that seems to be so important in the last days, we have a responsibility to send out the warning. But there are consequences for not watching that apply to the watchman. He continues on in chapter 33, verses 6 and 8. But if the watchman blow not the trumpet, and the people be not warned, if thou dost not speak to warn the wicked from his way, and it's not just the wicked, it's those that know and turn away, that, I'm going to just leave out wicked for right now, that man shall die in his iniquity, but his blood will I require at thine hand. That is a pretty stern consequence. There's also rewards for the watchman. It goes on to say in verse 9, but if you warn the wicked to turn from his way, and he does not turn from his way, that person shall die in his iniquity, but you will have delivered your soul. Consequences and rewards for the watchman. Responsibilities of covenant calendar teachers, that includes us right now. We are trying to do our best to be responsible and to answer these questions on judging. Messengers of Yahuah's covenant calendar that choose to alert others to these two serious commands of Moses that are found in Deuteronomy. We have no intent on placing judgment on others' lives or their salvation, but we are merely commissioned to sound an alarm for the fruits of their choices. And not only that, we would like to have them have the joy of understanding Yahuah's calendar and how beautiful it is. But should some feel that there is a judgment pronounced on the reckoning of their non-covenant calendar, which inherently causes discrepancies with the statutes of the Torah, we hope and pray that they would recognize this can only be the conviction from Yahuah's Ruach, that we are not trying to be a Holy Spirit, but that their conviction is coming from those beautiful words in the Torah. So the mandate of the moon study is pretty simple. The whole study is designed to provide ample information for everyone that perceives the full study, so they can make a decision according to Yahuah's divine outline for every detail of his covenant calendar. And we would like to have that as the focus of this study. It's not about judging somebody else. It's about giving the information so that you can freely investigate it for yourself and make your own choice. That's what it's all about. It's all about choice, just as Yahuah would give to you and to me and to everybody else. So keeping this in mind, we want to wrap things up in the rest of this study with the conclusion for 3394, and we will do that after we have a short review. So I hope that you've enjoyed this little piece on judgment and that you will ponder the information there and see what you think about it. So we just want to do a little bit of a review on the Hebrew moon word numbers and grammar. For some of you that are new tonight and haven't seen this, I will go through this little chart as it is very important. We have 5 Hebrew word numbers that are listed in the Tanakh that all connect to the word moon when you look them up in the Strong's Concordance. The 3394 has 26 listings. 3391 had 2 listings. 3842 had 3 listings, Labana. 7720 was just 1 listing, 1 verse, and 2320 had 20 verses listed in the Strongs, and that was a total of 52 references to using the word moon. But I also found that each of these have a part of speech, and this was very interesting. You already know about 3394. That is talking about the literal moon in the sky. It is our noun in this study. 3391 is going to pick up the verb part of speech. It is actually the primitive root, and this is going to link to the lunation cycle, something that moves in the sky. It's the action word. 3842 is Labana, and this is going to pick up the description of the color of the moon or the adjective. 7720, Saharan, is going to give us a comparison. It is a simile, something that is similar to the moon, like a pendant or an ankle bracelet or an ornament that is put on a camel that might have a crescent moon or a full moon, something that has a comparison to a phase of the moon in the sky. So right there, those first 4 Hebrew word numbers, we have a noun, a verb, an adjective, and a simile. And there's a very important reason why there's 4 different numbers. We will also look at 2320, and it is another verb. It's another repetition. It's something that is an action. And the question to this whole thing that we did in the last study was, why are there 2 verb forms for 1 moon? That was my question when I did this study. I want to know why we have to have 2 verb forms for 1 moon in the sky. We'll be breaking this all open, definitely not today. We'll be finishing 3394. So the 3394 study is going to be completed by a very careful examination. We'll do this today of the moon's ordinances. I know you're all just waiting on pins and needles to hear about that, from that Jeremiah 31:35 scripture. We are going to look very closely at the definition of 4150, which we know as Moed or seasons. And we're going to look very closely at the scripture in Psalms 104:19, where it mentions the moon's seasons. So we're going to take a very close look at Jeremiah 31:35 and these ordinances. And I have a lot of questions all the way along. Does an ordinance of the moon determine the commencement of the 4150 Moed seasons or the feasts and festivals? Is that an ordinance of the moon? That's what we're looking for. If the moon is not ordained to commence Abba's calendar months to determine the worship statutes, then what is the moon's heavenly purpose? Because we were taught that the moon's ordinances were to tell you when to find the feasts and festivals, when to find the month. And there's even more questions than that. Has mankind added job descriptions to the moon outside of what the Creator has given? I had to ask that question. And does the moon have a prominent position which it does not deserve regarding the feasts and festivals? I had to ask that question too, because we were looking for a full moon at Passover, and we were looking for a new moon at the first day of trumpets, as we read in Psalms 81:3. So I had a lot of questions. And by the way, everybody, the pictures that I'm using on my slides are clues to what's going on. So I hope you clue into it. Pictures are all big clues. So we need to know what the definition is for ordinances before we can do anything else. Yahuah declares there are ordinances of the heaven and the earth. And there's two different kinds of ordinances. There's 2706 and 2708. We're going to look at that in a little bit. But let's look at Job 38:33 first. He says, knowest thou the ordinances, that's 2708, of heaven? I think I'm just going to tell you right up front. The 2706 ordinances actually link more to the Creator or to Yahuah. The 2708 ordinances link to the bride. Okay, so we have bridegroom and bride. So Job says, knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? He's saying, bride, do you know them? Can you set the dominion thereof in the earth? And continuing on, then says Yahuah, if I have not appointed the ordinances, now this would be for the bride, if I have not appointed the ordinances for the bride of heaven and earth, then I will cast away the seed of Jacob and David. Just briefly, Yahuah's laws have governed the universe since its creation, and it continues to do so with astounding predictability in the movements of the heavenly bodies. And that's what's so neat about the Mazzaroth and the sun. Everything is just like so perfectly orchestrated. This proves that Yahuah's perfect order in his universe is always there. His covenant promises to his people are as fixed as the perfect universal laws or the ordinances of heaven and earth. And that's good news for the bride. Really good news for the bride, because she can count on the movements of these heavenly bodies to tell her something. So we should find out about these light ordinances. When I say light ordinances of heavens, I'm talking about the light givers in the heavens, the light, the sun and the Mazzaroth. Genesis 1:16, and Yahuah made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. The stars also I have he made in little tiny letters, because that was added into the text. So here's the questions. Everybody knows the sun is the greater light that rules the day, but most believe that the moon is the lesser light ruling the night. And we had to say, is it? Does the moon really rule the night? And where did Moses refer to the 3394 literal moon as a light on the fourth day of creation. Like, where did he tell us that? We're looking at these ordinances. Jeremiah 31:35 has the clues. He gives the declaration for the two great light givers, and it's very clear. Thus saith Yahuah, which giveth the sun for a light by day. Okay, we got that one. That's clear. And then he says, and the stars for a light by night. And that's the Mazzaroth. That's as clear as it can be. And I say, oh, the moon, seen in the night sky about only half of the month. And the other half of the month is in the day sky. So how is the moon a light for the night? Well, the moon has no light of its own. And this is going to be challenged. If you go say this to some people, you're going to hear that is not true. They will say the moon has its own light, and it's a cool light instead of a warm light. But that is not in Scripture. The moon is not ordained as a light giver to rule the night by Yahuah. But is the moon ordained for anything, for something, if it's not ordained as a light? Yes, the moon in the heavens has its own ordinances. Let's read it again. Jeremiah 31:35. Thus saith Yahuah, which giveth the ordinances of the moon. It's 2708. This has something to do with the bride. What in the world are ordinances? That's what we want to know. So I took this word ordinances, and it's for the heaven and for the earth. The root word is the primitive root that ensures the Creator's heavenly ordinances are unchangeable. And this is it. 2710 is the root word. Properly to engrave, by implication, to enact. It's a decree. It's set. That's the root definitions for ordinances. To enact, it's a decree, and it's to set, even to engrave. Let's look at the bridegroom side of it. The masculine ordinances are managed by the bridegroom for blessing, and it's number 2706, Coke, and it's from 2710. That's the root. It's an enactment. You see, you've got your words coming up again, to enact and an enactment of time, space, labor, or usage. And then look, a decree. It's a task. It's something that the bridegroom has decreed or enacted for the bride. Let's look at the bride side. This is the feminine ordinances that are given to the bride to follow, to keep, and to enjoy. The number is 2708. I don't know how to say it.
Kuka.
Kuka. So it's 2710, cock, and then there's Coke, and it's like, do you get that? So this is the feminine. 2708 is the feminine of 2706, meaning substantially the same. So this is the bride following the enactment that is given to the bridegroom. That's how these words are all put together. Yeah, by the bride. Anyway, it's kind of fun to look at it. Jeremiah 31:35, thus saith Yahuah, which giveth the ordinances of the moon. So there's questions. What are the ordinances of the moon? Because many people say the ordinances of the moon determine Yahuah's set-apart month commencement. Do they really? Well, I'm finding that moon ordinances have a pull with their lunar cycle. And we're going to address in this section just a little tiny bit of this information on the pull of the lunar cycle for the water, the land, the animals, and the plants. You can count your blessings from Yahuah. He's the bridegroom, the 2706. These are blessings from the bridegroom to the bride, the 2708. And it's kind of interesting how this works together. And I only did a little bit of research on this. There's a whole bunch more. You could probably do a 2 or 3 hour presentation on this. So let's look at the lunar cycle pull for the water. We're looking at the bride part of it, 2708. There's your scripture from Jeremiah 31:35. Yahuah giveth the ordinances of the moon, which divideth the sea when the waves roar. Now, I've had some people say to me, the moon's got nothing to do with the tides. Tim?
The scripture tells us differently.
It looks like the scripture is saying something different, but I have heard this from a lot of people. The moon has nothing to do with the tides. Tides are pulled by the gravitational force of both the sun and the moon. It's not just the moon, it's both of them working together. One pulls and the other pushes, they take turns, if that's the way you can say it.
Teamwork.
The tidal waters supply oxygen to the plants and the animals in the sea. So when the tides come crashing in against the rocks, these huge tidal waters come in, they crash, they go up, and they come down with a lot of force, taking oxygen into the water to bring oxygen to the plants and to the animals. That is a blessing for the bride that uses plants or food from the sea for food or for whatever. So that's a blessing for the bride. And there is a lot of scriptures in Job about this. Oh, here, we're going to look at it right now. Job has an illustration. This is coming from the bridegroom, 2706.
Job 38, 8, 10, and 11. Or who shut up the sea with doors when it brake forth, as if it had issued out of the womb, and break up for it my decreed place, and set bars and doors, and said, hitherto shalt thou come, but no further, and here shall thy proud waves be stayed?
Yes. Jeremiah also has an illustration, and this is also from the bridegroom, 2706 in Jeremiah 5.
Fear ye not me, saith Yahuah, will ye not tremble at my presence, which have placed the sand for the bound of the sea by a perpetual decree, 2706, that it cannot pass it, and though the waves thereof toss themselves, yet they cannot prevail. Though they roar, yet can they not pass over it?
Yes, more about the tides for the bridegroom, from the bridegroom to the bride. Let's look at the lunar cycle pull for land animals. Oh, this is such a huge topic to study. I'm sorry I can't give you more, but this is your homework. You need to go look at this as well, because these are the ordinances of the moon. The lunar cycle impacts human reproduction, as well as land and sea animal husbandry. And I shouldn't have to say any more than that. Farm animals are dehorned and castrated, and I'm also going to say when they brand them successfully, because the blood clotting is different when you do this according to the moon cycles. I don't remember which cycle it is, but apparently when you follow the cycle of the moon, the cattle don't have as much trouble with their blood, with them bleeding. I've looked into this. If you get your hair cut at a certain cycle of the moon, it will grow faster and fuller by these lunar cycles. Parasite cleansing is more successful if it's done before parasites begin to reproduce at the full moon. That's a really interesting thing to study as well. These are ordinances of the moon that come from the bridegroom to bless the bride. Let's look at the lunar cycle pull for the land plants, not the sea plants, but the land plants. The lunar cycle, the lunar pull affects the soil and the moisture, plant sap, and the water table of the earth. When you go out in the morning, where we live, we have dirt roads. The dirt is wet. It's wet. It was dry when the sun set the night before, but when you get up in the morning, it's wet. It's because the moon has pulled the moisture out of the earth to water the earth. Lunar cycles also influence agricultural seasons of seeding and harvesting, especially in the haying season. And gardens flourish when they're planted according to various lunar phases. I'll just give you briefly what I understand, that if you have vegetables in your garden like peas and zucchini, corn, anything that grows above the ground, if you plant those kinds of plants at the crescent moon, it has a pull that pulls the plants upwards. If you plant potatoes and carrots and beets and turnips and parsnips and fruits or vegetables that are roots. If you plant those at the full moon, then there is a pull to root towards the earth, down into the earth. So Farmer's Almanac talks about this all the time. But guess what? So does the scriptures in Deuteronomy 33:14 and Psalms 104:19. We're going to look at those. Let's look at Deuteronomy 33:14. This is an ordinance of the harvest moon. And for the precious things that are put forth by the moon. Now I want you to notice, this is not 3394. This is not the noun moon. This is the verb action, the lunation cycle. So this is now linking together with 3391. For the precious things or harvest put forth by the moon. Well, let's look up 4022. It is something valuable. It is a precious fruit. It is your harvest. And 3391 is the lunation cycle of the moon. So the lunation cycle of the moon, according to Torah or to Moses, is that it has something to do with giving us our harvest. That is an ordinance. So this verse aligns with agricultural seasons. But now let's compare to Psalms 104:19 and the word seasons. And we had this question about 4 weeks ago. What about Psalms 104:19? Does it define ordinances of the moon? Because this is what it says. He appointed the moon, it's 3394, the literal moon, 4 seasons, 4150, that's your Moed. This is a verse that is often used to place the moon in a position to commence Yahuah's set apart months and the related worship, appointed worship times. And we have to say why. Because we were taught that this verse is extremely important, right, Tim?
Yes.
This is the verse that tells you that the moon is appointed for the seasons and the moon starts the month. And this is the appointed worship times.
That's what we're taught
That's what we're taught
in the past.
in a non-Torah book.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's examine the definitions for 4150, because there might be something there that we need to look at very carefully. I'm just going to back up. When I say we need to look at this very carefully, it's because you're going to have a lot of resistance. When you start to share this with people that are using the moon month and they won't know this, you have to know how to explain this. So we are going to look very carefully at 4150. I hope you've got your seat belts on. But first there is a note about italicized word in the Strong's Concordance. I think everybody knows that in the King James Version, when there's an italicized word, what does that mean, Jim?
It means it's an addition. It's a suggested thought put into that verse.
Didn't really belong there.
That's correct.
Okay. But that also follows for the Strong's Concordance. I didn't know that. And this is a quote from Strong's Concordance that you need to take note of. Quote, they, and he's talking about words in italics, are a rendering from the authorized version, and they denote an explanation of the variations from the usual form. These italicized words in the Strong's Concordance are a rendering or an explanation from the usual form. So these variations from the usual form, this is not a quote anymore, I'm just writing this to you, could mean the usual definition as taught by the Jewish mindset. When considering the word seasons, 4150 Moed, the Jewish mindset can most often mean that 4150 defines and it designates this word seasons to be first linked to the annual appointed feast and festival seasons.
And my question to you, Charlene, is would this have anything to do with the 2 verses that tells us not to look to the sun and the moon? Does it have anything to do with those 2 verses being left out of the 613 mitzvot?
Yeah, Tim, you know what? let's wait till it's done and we'll ask everybody on the panel.
Okay,
So
we're looking for your answers.
this is slide 52. When considering the word seasons, the Jewish mindset can most often mean, and I put can most often mean because there might be some that aren't doing this, that 4150 always means that seasons means appointed feast and festival seasons. Period. That's it. It doesn't mean anything else. And here's the question. Is that true or is it false? So I'm using a computer program for Strong's. I'm not using eSword, so I'm going to show you my program. This is what it looks like. It says 4150 Moed, and we're just going to go through it kind of quickly here. From 3259, it says properly an appointment, a fixed time or season, specifically a festival, conventionally a year, by implication an assembly, okay, convened for a definite purpose, technically the congregation, by extension, oh my, this is sounding like feasts and festivals, a place of meeting, a signal appointed beforehand. And then these King James versions are other suggestions that the King James can use instead, like appointed sign, appointed time, a place of solemn assembly, a congregation, a solemn feast, a due season, something that's solemn. It's got the word synagogue in there, and set time and appointed time. So it sure sounds like it to me, doesn't it, Tim?
Yes.
And then when you look at 3259, I'm putting this up here for you to look at. It is the primitive root. It means to fix upon by agreement or appointment, by implication, implying to meet at a stated time, to summon, to trial, to direct. It also has to engage for marriage. Okay, that really doesn't have anything to do with sacred feasts and festivals. Agree to make an appointment, to assemble yourselves, betroth. There you've got that wedding language again, to gather yourself together, to meet together, a set time. Okay, so this sounds like it has some other definitions that maybe not just feasts and festivals, but maybe something to do with getting engaged, being betrothed, something to do with assembling for a wedding. Did you notice from my Strong's computer program, there is not one italicized word. That's why I read every single word there. There's not one italicized word. Now we're going to look at the Strong's Handbook. We're going to look at there's italicized words. And my book is from 1986. I just want to drop down to the bottom of the slide, that 3259. It's a feminine form of 4150. Okay? I just want you to take a quick look through there. It's a primitive root. It means by agreement or appointment. By implication, I want you to note these italicized words: to meet, it's italicized, summon, to direct, to engage. Okay, you can just kind of whiz through there. There you have betroth again, meet together. But you know what? I looked up all 29 verses that had 3259. They were all in, of course, the Old Testament, the Tanakh. Not one single 3259 was ever linked to feasts or festivals.
Wow.
It was only linked to appointments of meeting for a variety of reasons, like if you make an appointment with somebody to get together, or of course if there's a wedding, but not one of the verses ever linked to feasts and festivals. So I'm going to discount 3259. Now let's go up to the top. Goodbye, 3259. This is the masculine of 3259 is 4150. Let's take a look at these italicized words. Properly an appointment, time, festival, year, assembly, congregation, place of meeting, and a signal. There's, I think, 7 of them. Now I put a box around the King James Version part because these are words that can be used in place of these words that you see in the top. So we're not going to think about those words right now. So we want to remove these italicized words. from 4150. Remember, I'm not going to do anything with the King James Version ones that say that there's other ones, because these terms are not considered, as they are only suggestions for the King James usage, whether they're correct all the time or not. So we're not going to pay any attention to that. But I want you to look and see what happens here. What's left when you take out the italicized words? I've taken them all out, and I'm going to show you what is left. Because if we read what's there, it says specifically, conventionally, implication, convene for a definite purpose, technically something, extension. We have nothing to base this definition on. I'm going to show you what's left. Properly, a fixed season. That's what's left. Can you discern the very first definition of 4150? Properly, a fixed season. Let's discern this first definition of 4150 as a fixed season. In Leviticus 26:5.
And your threshing shall reach unto the vintage, and the vintage shall reach until the sowing time. Spring season. 1 Samuel 6:13. And they were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley. There's your summer season. Exodus 34:22. And thou shalt observe the feast of weeks of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the feast of ingathering at the year's end. There is your autumn season.
That's interesting. And you can tell by the scriptures, the context of what season it is, right?
Yes.
It's very, very clear there. So these, everyone, are 4150 agricultural seasonal markers. This is your first definition for Moed. Is it possible the ordinances of the moon are connected to the agricultural harvests of the yearly seasons? Is it possible the ordinances of the moon are connected to the agricultural harvest of the yearly seasons? Well, there's some other uses for the word seasons. We're going to look at day and night seasons. This is a duration of time, not a festival.
My bones are pierced in me in the night season, and my sinews take no rest. The night season is 39:15.
And 39:15 belongs to the word night, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Psalms 22:2. O my Elohim, I cry in the night season. Again, 39:15. And am not silent.
So that's not talking about a feast and festival season, is it?
Nope.
Nope.
Jeremiah 33:20. Thus saith Yahuah, if ye can break my covenant of the day and my covenant of the night, and that there should not be day and night in their season. 62:56.
Okay, this is a really important verse because this is talking about a covenant of the day and a covenant of the night, but this has got nothing to do with feast and festival seasons. So let's look at feast and festival seasons that are moeds. And I want you to notice in these scriptures that feasts are always qualified in the context. When the verses are talking about a feast and festival season, it's going to qualify it in the verse. We've talked about qualifiers before.
Yes.
Okay.
Exodus 13:10. Thou shalt therefore keep this unleavened bread ordinance in his season from year to year.
Yes, and now I put unleavened bread in there because the context is unleavened bread. We're not looking at all the verses, but the context is unleavened bread, and that is a festival season, so you have a qualifier in there. This is actually a moed for feast and festival seasons.
Leviticus 23:4. These are the feasts of Yahuah, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons.
So does everybody see the qualifier there? It's a holy convocation for a feast and festival season. It has the qualifier. So you know that seasons in that case is a festival season.
Numbers 9:2. Let the children of Israel also keep the Passover at his appointed season.
Pretty plain, isn't it, Tim?
Pretty good qualifier.
And one more.
Deuteronomy 16:6. Thou shalt sacrifice the Passover at even, at the going down of the sun, at the season that thou camest forth out of Egypt.
They're all very clear. They all have a qualifier.
Yes.
So we're learning that we need to find these qualifiers, and that's not just for the word season, but it's for other words too, like lechem, bread, in the Tanakh.
Yes.
And there's some other examples that we have done. So let's go back to the moon and the seasons with this Psalms 104:19, because it says, he appointed the moon for seasons, 4150. And the question is there a qualifier in Psalms 104 to designate that the moon is involved with the feasts? Remember, we had 4 scriptures that had all the qualifiers. What about this verse? Now that we have examined the definitions for 4150 very carefully, it is time to align the proper definition with the context of Psalms 104:19. And everyone, it has to agree with Torah. If it doesn't agree with Torah,
Throw it out.
there's has to agree with Moses. So there are Torah truths, and we have some thoughts to ponder on this verse. And if you don't remember anything in anything we talk about today, I hope you remember this verse. He appointed the moon. This is the literal moon in the sky for seasons. First of all, this is not a
Torah verse.
In Isaiah 8:20, we did this last time, we learned that any non-Torah Tanakh scriptures have to be in full alignment with Torah, right?
Yes,
The
absolutely.
The testimony is the same as Torah. It testifies of what Torah is teaching. But Psalms 104:19 definitely sounds like the moon is involved with Yahuah's month start. So that means Psalms 104:19 has to be examined very closely. And maybe you already know the answer. We are going to look again at 4150 seasons, the first definition. According to the Strongs, it is properly a fixed season. That's the first definition. The term Moed, first defined as a fixed season, is rightly understood first in the context of the appointed agricultural seasons. Guess what? Genesis 1:14. It is true. It is true. The moon is ordained along with the sun to usher in agricultural seasons. The sun has a lot to do with it too. Here's the question. Why did Moses use 4150 and not another word? Like, isn't there another word to figure this puzzle out? That's what we want to find out. Let's look at the second definition for seasons. Strong's 4150, the second definition. The following terms are second definitions according to King James Version usages for feasts and festivals. And it says specifically a festival, conventionally a year, or ending of an agricultural season or festival. By implication, an assembly that's convened for a definite purpose. Technically, the congregation. By extension, it's the place of meeting, and also a signal appointed beforehand. So the second definition of Moed are implied as a festival, an assembly, or a congregational place of meeting for a definite purpose. We all know that, because that's what we were taught. That's the second definition. What about Moses and King David with this 4150 Moed? First definition is a fixed season. And King David used 4150 in Psalms 104:19, appointing the moon for seasons. David meant agricultural seasons. Does Moses write about this? I should have quiz time. You should know this because we did it. This is Deuteronomy 33:14. This is the first time that Moses connects the moon to harvest. It said, and for precious things put forth by the moon. That was the 3391. That's the lunation cycle. We're going to do that in depth on the next teaching. So here, Moses is telling us that 3391 defines the moon's lunation cycle that ushers in the 4150 agricultural seasons for Psalms 104:19 as well. In fact, the only word that Moses or David could use for the moon's agricultural seasons is Moed 4150. There isn't another word. There's only one. So we have a puzzle here, a puzzle for the 4150 seasons. The first definition is agricultural seasons, and the second definition is worship statutes. And there's a third definition that's coming soon. You're going to see there's even a third definition. 4150 Moed is the only Hebrew word number that can designate the agricultural seasons and or the worship statutes. But don't forget, the first definition of 4150 is a fixed time or season, which must be first rightly understood in the context of the 4 seasons of the year. Or there might be some that just have a warm season and a cooler season and a rainy season and a dry season, but anyway, 4 seasons. These seasons are fixed. They do not vary. One of the ordinances of the moon is to maintain these fixed seasons for agricultural purposes that happen to coincide with the harvest of the appointed festivals. Excuse me. So Torah truths about the moon.
When the moon is used to appoint Yahuah's month commencement, the festivals are never fixed. They can vary between 1 to 5 weeks, dependent on the arrival of the specific moon phase after the equinox.
And I want to say right here, the very first time, not the very first time, the second time I kept Passover in 2017, the Passover was May the 5th. It was really late, May the 5th. And other times, it's like the beginning of April. That is a variance of 4 to 5 weeks. That is not a fixed festival. That's a great variance. Psalms 104:19 is not a Torah verse, but it testifies as a companion verse to Deuteronomy 33:14, which is a Torah verse. The precious fruits are brought forth because the agricultural seasons have come. It is a mandated description or an ordinance of the moon that was appointed by the bridegroom for the bride. And there's a thought to ponder. Has man tampered with the divine mandate for the moon? And actually, I probably could have said, have our friends, the Jewish Messianic communities or Orthodox communities tampered with this mandate for the moon? Do you remember that picture that I had the last time of the Jews looking through the telescope to kind of sight that sliver moon?
Yes.
Even with all of this evidence, there are some that still believe that 4150 is only defined as a worship statute. But you know what? We need to look at a third definition for Moed. Is it possible the stork will have something to say about the Moed definition? And the question is, why? Here's one example. Jeremiah 8, verse 7. This is the first part of the verse. Yea, the stork in the heaven knoweth her appointed times. It is 4150. Adam Clark, he has this to say. The birds of passage know the times of their going and return, and they punctually observe them, and they obey the dictates of nature. That's Moed. Here's the last part of the verse. And the turtle dove, and the crane, and the swallow, they observe the time of their coming. This is what it says in the complete Jewish Bible. Storks in the sky know their seasons, doves and swallows and cranes their migration times,
but my people do not know the rulings of Adonai. The birds know, but Yah's people do not know how to observe these 4150s. What goes where? So I'm saying, have the Moeds gone to the birds too? Yahuah gave more than one definition for 4150. There's some lessons that we have learned. The fixed agricultural seasons have first mention with 4150. The feast statutes need to have a qualifier in the verse, and the birds have their appointed times of migration and breeding. But most people have not recognized the first and third definitions for 4150 Moedim. They just think there's only one definition, and it's appointed times for worship. Most of us were taught that 4150 seasons in Genesis 1:14 refer only to festival worship seasons ordained by the moon month. And I have to say no. The word season in Genesis 1:14 does not refer first to festival seasons appointed by the moon. And that might be a shocker. So let's review how the agricultural seasons have first mentioned in Scripture. Genesis 1:14, and let them, it's talking about the heavenly lights, be for seasons. There's other terms in there too, but we're looking at the word seasons, 4150. The great light that rules the day brings vitality to the life in the seed. That's the sun. Are there other commentators that agree that the first definition of seasons points to the agricultural purposes? Well, let's investigate. Here's a commentator from Kiel and Deluxe, because I was finding that Genesis 1:14 was linking to the agricultural seasons. This is what he said. For seasons, or for fixed definite times, he has Moedim, to fix and establish. He said it is not for festal seasons merely, but to regulate definite points and periods of time by virtue of their periodical influence upon agriculture, navigation, and other human occupations, as well as upon the course of human, animal, and vegetable life. And for example, that's the breeding time of animals and the migrations of birds that we read in Jeremiah 8:7. So he found the same thing as what I found. The first definition is just for agricultural seasons. Can the agricultural fixed seasons be established first in the creation week? Well, I went back to day 3, where the seeds were planted with an intention of a harvest. That was the whole plan. And then on day 4 of creation, the sun is given to provide all the elements for plants to grow and to produce a harvest. So that is the proper order. Then on the 7th day of creation, which is our weekly Sabbath, that was given to man, and it is the first day in the creation week that is designated as a Moed worship statute. But it is not connected to any agricultural harvest, not the weekly Sabbath. Yes, the sun's first mandate in the creation week was for the agricultural seasons. That was the first mandate. The 4150 feast days will follow later, hovering around the harvest of spring, summer, and the beautiful colors of fall. So we have our spring appointed times of Passover, right, Tim?
Yes.
And unleavened bread and first fruits. And then we have Pentecost. And then in the fall, we follow with Sukkot. Just looking at a couple of other commentators to see what they have to say. This is from Barnes. In Genesis 1:14, he says, the seasons are the natural seasons of the year and the set times for civil and sacred purposes, which man has attached to special days and years in the revolution of time. Do you see the order? He put the set time, the natural seasons of the year first, and then set times for civil and sacred purposes was next. He had the right order. Another one from Leupold, for Genesis 1:14. The luminaries are for seasons. Therefore, seasons, or times in the widest sense, are to be thought of, look, agricultural seasons. And he names Hosea 2, 9, 11, and chapter 9, verse 5. We're going to look at that. For agricultural seasons, seasons for seafaring men, seasons for beasts and birds, as long as they are times that are fixed and come with stated regularity. First definition, agricultural seasons. Let's take a little closer look at Hosea chapter 2 and chapter 9. He has a perfect illustration. I just couldn't believe it when I found this. I don't think this was accident. Let's look at chapter 2, verse 9. Therefore will I return, and I will take away my corn in the time. This is talking about of harvest. I will take away my corn in the time thereof, and my wine in the season. This is season of harvest. That word is 4150. 4150 in this verse is referring to the agricultural time of harvest. Is that first definition for 4150. We're going to look at 2 verses later, same chapter. Hosea 2:11. I will also cause all her mirth to cease, or her joy. Her joy is going to cease. Look at the qualifiers here. Feast days, her new moons, it should say new months, and her Sabbaths, and all her solemn feasts. That's 4150. Guess what, everyone? We've got qualifiers in here. It's talking about feast days, new months, Sabbaths, and solemn feasts. So here 4150 is referring to the annual festivals because of all these qualifiers. They're feast days and solemn feasts. It's just like right there. So yes, that is appointed feasts. And then in chapter 9, verse 5, what will ye do in the solemn day and in the day of the feast of Yahuah? Once again, this is referring to appointed worship statutes. It has the qualifier of solemn day and the feast of Yahuah. It isn't talking about agricultural seasons. Isn't that neat? That's all in Hosea. And this is way down the line. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to say around 700 BC. I'm just going to take a guess at that. So let's get back to the moon and the seasons for Psalms 104:19. You should know the answer. He appointed the literal moon in the sky for this 4150 seasons. This is our review. In this verse, the moon is appointed for agricultural seasons. It doesn't have a qualifier to say it's for the festival seasons. The moon has no part in defining the timing of the appointed festivals, even though these worship statutes do align with the agricultural harvest that we enjoy on the earth as the bride. So the definition for the Moed appointed seasons is not given to the 3394 moon in the Torah. But what about 3391? What about that moon? Non-Torah verses like Psalms 104:19 have to align with Torah teachings. That is an absolute. And I'm here to say man has indeed added ordinances to the moon that were never authorized by Yahuah. Never. Now, I want to do a quick review for Psalms 89:37. We did talk about this the last time, but this is also another key verse, Tim, that is used. It was one of the top 3 verses that is used to say that the moon is in charge of the month. And it is reading like this. It, and I've got a question mark there. What is the it? Is it meaning the moon or something else? It shall be established forever as the moon and as a faithful witness in heaven. And when I have been taught that this verse means that the moon is in charge of the month and the festival worship statutes, nobody has ever given a verse around it. They have only quoted this verse all by itself. That is the problem. They're using this verse to establish the moon as the faithful witness for the Moedim. And you know what, Tim?
Yes.
I believe them. I believed them.
Okay, explain.
I thought they were right. So I have a question. Is this verse really saying that the moon is the faithful witness in heaven for the Moedim appointed times? That is the question, because it says it. And what is the it? We have to go look. We'll confirm the context for Psalms 89:37. We're going to back up to verse 34. This is a really important verse. My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that has gone out of my lips. The context is Yahuah will not break his covenant. Verse 35. Once I have sworn by my holiness that I will not lie unto David. I will not tell an untruth. And the context is for Yahuah to profane the covenant would be the same to profane his own holiness, which is one of his essential attributes. Yahuah says, I cannot lie. I will keep my covenant. Verse 36, it says, his seed shall endure forever. You need to go back to verse 35. It's talking about David's seed has to endure forever, and that is through Yahuah. And then it says, and his throne, that's talking about David's throne, as the sun before me. So the context of this verse is David's seed will endure forever. That is through Yahuah's power. And David's throne is going to endure as the sun in the sky. Now we will look at verse 37. It shall be established forever as the moon. The it, to me, I see is talking about David's spiritual seed is going to be established forever as the moon. Just as the moon is always in the sky, just like the sun is always in the sky, it was compared. David's spiritual seed will continue forever, just as the moon is a faithful witness. David's spiritual seed will be a faithful witness in heaven. So the context, when I look at these scriptures, is saying just as the sun and the moon are faithful witnesses in the sky to the Creator's design, so will Yahuah be faithful to his everlasting covenant and to David's spiritual seed.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like to me. This is slide 82 if we need to come back to it. I looked at Matthew Henry's commentary, and by the way, I don't look at any other commentaries until I search out the definitions in the Hebrew, and I believe Tim does the same. He just goes back to the 16 and 1700s. But Matthew Henry had this to say about Psalms 89:37. For the covenant's sake, my faithfulness shall not fail. My covenant will I not break. It was supposed that they had broken Yahuah's statutes, profaned and polluted them. So the word signifies, but, says Yahuah, I will not break, I will not profane, and I will not pollute my covenant. That which is said and sworn is that Yahuah will have a church in the world as long as the sun and the moon endure. The sun and the moon are faithful witnesses in heaven of the wisdom, the power, and the goodness of the Creator, and shall continue while time lasts. But the seed of Christ shall be established forever as lights of the world while the world stands to shine in it. And when it is at an end, they shall be established lights shining in the firmament of the Father. Isn't that wonderful? He just said it so much better than I could say it. Conclusion for Psalm 89:37. It, or Yahuah's witness, shall be established forever, just like the moon is in the heavens. It will be a faithful witness. Yahuah's witness with his seed on the throne, his spiritual seed, it's always going to be there. He said, he promised it would be. There's lots of scriptures around this. If you do research, I could have done a whole presentation of an hour long. There's oodles of scriptures, but let me read this, just this one. Psalm 72:5. They shall fear thee as long as the sun and the moon endure throughout all generations.
Nice.
Isn't that wonderful? There's lots of them. Lots of scriptures. Go take a look. So the summary, Yahuah is witness to and he attests to his own oath and promises as a faithful witness, literally a faithful witness as the sun and the moon are in the heavens. Absolutely wonderful. So let's wrap this up. Final conclusion. You better know this because I'm going to test you. The first mention of 3394 for moon in the Torah is a prophetic utterance for us, and that is covenant Torah pages. It's in Genesis 37. Got it right here. The very first mention of moon in the scriptures for the word number 3394 is found in Genesis 37:9. That was a prophecy given through Joseph's dream. It was prophetic significance. There is no confirmation for the literal moon to declare the beginning of Yahuah's calendar months. That was the very first time it was used, and the most important usage for 3394 is prophetic significance. The first mention affirms the moon's most important job description is prophetic, and you can go read all kinds of references in the Gospels from Yahusha. There's oodles of them. He's linking back to this very first usage. We also need to consider that 3394 is used as a sign, as a signature 10 times, but you only find it in non-Torah pages. It's not in Torah. This is in agreement, though, with Torah that never once is the literal moon declared to be the sign to begin Yahuah's calendar month. Not one time for this word number. The 3394 moon does not commence Yahuah's set-apart month. This is out of 5 word numbers. We're only looking at the first one. It definitely does not have anything to do with Yahuah's month. We looked at Genesis 1:14-16. It does tell us that there's 2 lights in the sky for signs. It does not say the moon is one of those lights. Jeremiah 31:35 confirms that the sun is the greater light and the Mazzaroth is the lesser light. And Jeremiah 31:35 confirms that 3394 literal moon is given for ordinances to bless the earth and mankind with agricultural seasons. That's for sowing and reaping. That's the bridegroom giving blessings to the bride. And those concepts are linking to that Psalms 104:19 and Deuteronomy 33:14, the agricultural seasons. The moon is a faithful witness in the sky for creation and our Creator's oath, not as a witness for Yahuah's set-apart months. And the moon is not ordained by Yahuah for any calculation or any proclamation of his feasts and festivals. So the truth about the matter, I bet every one of you knows it now for 3394. One last word, we're winding up. Under the most searching scrutiny for the research on 3394 only, there is not one shred of evidence to support that the literal moon commences Yahuah's calendar month. We won't be studying anything more on 3394, but I bet you're asking, what's next? We're going to look at 3391 in a very, very deep way, Tim. We only touched on it today, but 3391 is important because it's the primitive root of 3394. And as the verb component, it represents the lunation cycle of the moon. This is your movement, your action. Will there be evidence the lunation cycle commences Yahuah's set-apart month? Or will we find something else even more startling? Because it is the cycles. Some people are looking at the conjunction to start their month. Some are using the sliver moon, and there's now some that are using the full moon to start their month. So we're going to look and see. So the next study for the moon, I'm going to call it part 3, and it's going to be the moon. Oh, the moon. And I hope that it's ready for you on July 20th. And I'm saying, oh moon, where will you be that night? Are you going to be in the day sky?
It could be.
The day season or the night season? And that's the end, everyone. If you have any questions or comments, certainly you can email Charlene, myself, or Tim. And that's it. That's all she wrote.
Oh, the moon.
Oh, the moon.
Praise Abba. Hallelujah. Thank you for a most excellent teaching.
People, I want to give us very, very special thanks to Charlene. She's coming out here to look after her father. She's been on the road for 36 hours. She's had some road blockage problems. She's dead tired, and I think she did a bang-on job of presenting tonight, and I want to thank her.
Yeah.
Well done. Well done, Charlene.
Very well done. Yeah. I can't wait to get the PowerPoint out to everybody.
Yeah.
We might have to wait till I get back home. So I'm traveling right now.
No worries.
We'll send it to Neil. We'll email it to Neil, and he can get it fixed up.